never thought I'd ever say this or be talking about like Trump in this manner, certainly after his first term, but he has certainly brought common sense back to international politics. You've seen the whirlwind of that. Don't know whether you've paid attention to it this weekend, but on Twitter, Elon Musk's pretty much lit up the whole of the Labour government.
Yeah, I think the whole world has. He's on one, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, but he's on one for the right reasons. I mean, who doesn't want a national inquiry to see how far-reaching the incompetency goes, whether it's local councils, police forces, MPs, because there's clearly been, you only have to look at the wording, grooming gangs. Well, they're not grooming gangs, are they? They're religiously motivated rape gangs that are targeting young, vulnerable, white girls. That's not a grooming gang. That's a rape gang. And imagine that was your daughter or your niece and what had happened. I read the Oxford transcripts of what got released from the court. It was harrowing. Like, you can't read that as a human being and not be angry, not be absolutely furious about how them people of young children, they're not even people, the young children have been let down by police force, local councillors, care workers, and the politicians that said they would do something about it, but all they've done is knock it around like political table tennis. So it shouldn't take an international figure like that to make the people of Britain wake up. But unfortunately, it has. I mean, I know there's been lots of people. Maggie Oliver, the policewoman, retired policewoman, she deserves a night up for it, in my opinion, the work she's done for the victims of this and to raise awareness of it. But constantly by, regime after regime has kind of been kicked into the long grass. They all say the right things. I've seen Andy Burnham, who I like Andy, MP, was on the telly the week trying to point score on it. Wes Street, an MP, trying to point score on it. All attacking Musk for raising awareness to it and calling out Jess Phillips, I think, who's a Midlands MP, who's ironically, I think, meant to be in charge of safeguarding.
Safeguarding women and children.
Yeah. But she said when she was in opposition to the Tories, said she was going to, using this against the Tories, said she was going to call for an inquiry, has got into power. She's got a small minority in her constituency and is reliant upon about 15,000 Muslim votes, has got into power and has just gone stum on the matter. She's actually said, we're not going to have a national inquiry about it. So I think Musk said to her that she was an apologist for a rape genocide on Twitter during the weekend, which is
quite
quite
off though.
Well, it's quite strong, but also Starmer was answering questions on that this morning, saying, far right language, and I was just like, this is not far right. To be against religiously motivated rape, jihad, and sexual exploitation of children is not far right. It's not a far right position. It's just right. It doesn't matter where your politics are. It doesn't matter what you believe. In my opinion, if you're not motivated to do something about this, to make sure this never happens again in our country, I just don't know what kind of humanity you've got about you. Now, everything that they don't like is labelled as far right. Like, if you're against illegal immigration and people coming here on boats illegally, you're far right. If you don't like men using women's spaces, because, confused men, trans men, whatever you want to call them, using women's spaces or competing in women's sports, you're far right. They were fucking saying the countryside was far right a few weeks ago. They actually were saying the countryside was far right. I mean, this is the lunacy of it. And if you look around, and I've called a few of them out, I've had to go with Carol Vorderman, because she's had to go at Musk this morning because Starmer's responded. I said, where have you been? Well, 250,000 young white children have been raped and sexually exploited by these grooming gangs, whatever you call them, grooming gangs as the paper calls them. Where have you been? Why are you silent on it? Why have you only chirped up now? Because Starmer's responded to Musk. Like, where's your outrage? Surely you put your politics to one side as a woman who's politically motivated and you say, this is not acceptable. Gary Neville called him out at the weekend. You know, when I made the joke about Fred and Rose West and everyone got the knickers in the twist and ITV put the statements out, he piled on virtue signalling. Oh, enough is enough and all that. And I said to him, I'll tell you when enough's enough. Little twib. And where's he? He's tweeting about snowball fights at fucking Anfield and the snow coming down and no, not a mention of this. No mention of these vulnerable people who are from his area, who are working class people like he's meant to be. You know, Bury, how far from Bury to Rochdale? How far from Bury to Oldham? 6 miles, 7 miles, 8 miles? Not a peep about this. And the reason being either he's bought and paid for, or if you remember before the election, he was there doing his big propaganda piece with Keir Starmer, walking around talking about all these things. When the Tories were in power, he was criticising everything to do with the Tories. We haven't heard anything from Gary about stuff like this. So use your profile, use your influence, if that's what you want to do politically, to raise awareness to everything that matters, not just the stuff that lines your pockets. Like, these people physically knock me sick. I don't know how you can be apocalyptic about Elon Musk tweeting this weekend to MPs to try and hold or raise awareness about what they've brushed under the carpet for the last few decades. And they're saying, why are billionaires interfering in British politics? How dare he interfere in British politics? And I'm like, hold on a second. Only fucking 6 weeks ago, Bill Gates was welcomed into the Houses of Parliament by Starmer. 5 weeks ago, Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, sitting around the table with Starmer and the Labour front benches. We're constantly sending aid, billions of pounds worth of aid to Ukraine to involve ourselves in a fucking war that's got nothing to do with us. Only about 2 months ago, the Storm Shadow, the British missiles, never mind the British fucking tanks we've sent out there, the British missiles were used in Kursk in Russian territory, which could have escalated that into a potential nuclear conflict with somebody that we do not want to be getting involved with, especially if Trump comes in and pulls military aid or our military protection from us because he's disenfranchised with David Lammy calling him a KKK member or Angela Rayner calling him a racist or whatever else that the rest of the imbeciles on the Labour front bench have been saying when they were in opposition. So we've got to get this right. Nobody's interfering in our politics, but we're going to interfere in everybody else's across the globe? Or are we just going to kick off when it's stuff against the left narrative, and the left narrative being the left-wing media that we've got? Because the universities and the media in this country have been captured by the left wing. And the left wing are mentally ill. They do not have the ability to be able to separate their political ideology with what's right and what's wrong. So it's like, well, we're just going to ignore that because that doesn't fit our virtue signaling woke left-wing nonsense. But what we're going to do is, anytime anyone challenges the status quo that we don't like, we're going to take them on and label them far right. It's the biggest scandal, I believe, this rape and sexual exploitation of vulnerable children in our country is the biggest scandal in my lifetime. You know, Hillsborough was up there. The Postmasters thing we've seen was up there, and they've made documentaries about it, and the whole country was outraged. You know, the fella Alan Bates got honours in the New Year's list the other day, and everybody was rightly outraged because it was wrong what happened to them people. No mention of this. Like, anyone who's mentioned it, they're far right. Yeah. It's like, what? Like, what kind of person are you that you can't come out and say, look, that they might be me politics. That might be the way I voted. That might be the way I feel about certain things. But also, that's just wrong. That is wrong. And how has that been allowed to happen? And is still happening to this day. The survivors, Sammy Woodhouse, who follow on there, she's come out. She was fuming. I've tweeted the video of her before. Fuming with what Starmer said today. Because she's labelled her far right. She was someone who was raped as a young girl, sexually trafficked as a young girl by these religiously motivated grooming gangs. She had a child through the rape, right? The fella who got convicted of it was allowed to stay in the country because he's got this child and was given parental rights in the court by the courts to the child who'd raped the girls again. And it's just like, what's going on? Like, what the fuck has happened to these left-wing imbeciles? Because that's all he can be at this point. And, Tommy Robinson, whether you like him or loathe him, he's been banging this drum. I don't think from what I gather, I don't think he's in jail for this purpose. He's in jail for contempt of court on something else or whatever, due to his documentary. But he's been banging on about this for a long, long period of time. Now, obviously, EDL, Nigel Farage was at the weekend buzzing, Nick Candy, Nigel Farage, Reform are going to be relaunched. They're going to, be able to compete financially with the other big parties because Elon Musk's this backer. And I've seen interviews from Farage where he's absolutely buzzing because Musk's kind of the richest man in the world about to endorse him, which pretty much means Donald Trump, because Musk and Donald Trump are mega tight at the minute. Donald Trump's going to be endorsing him. Now, what's happened is he's been asked questions about Tommy Robertson raising awareness to this. And because he's a slime ball, Farage, I've never liked him. That's why I was saying to everybody, spoil your ballot in the election. Don't give it to this scumbag Farage. I can't have him because he's out to feather his nest. I called him Tory Light or Diet UKIP the other day on social media because that's how I see him. He wants to be in the establishment. He's desperate to be the leader of the Conservative Party, but the Conservative Party won't have him. You remember him from his UKIP days. He's just moved into this different guise. He's been an EMP, whatever it is, in the European Parliament. And he's not really done much for the people. But also, all of a sudden, because of the state of the Conservative for the last 14 years and the way Labour have started their regime to come, all of a sudden, Reform have made more traction because a lot of disenfranchised Tories and a lot of disenfranchised Labour voters have now gone, we think Reform's the only way, because of Nick Clegg and Ed Davey, is it, the tit who keeps doing TikToks? Nick Clegg ruined the Lib Dems, who were the legitimate third option when he made a coalition government with David Cameron, because Nick Clegg promised all those young voters who voted for him that university fees would be abolished. They ended up voting for him. It gave them a bigger vote than they would normally get, and it allowed them to go in with the Tories and create that coalition government that David Cameron was the head of. In the midst of that, they lied about everything they said they were going to do in the manifesto. So they upset a couple of certainly a new generation of voters who would never vote Lib Dem again. So they pretty much torpedoed themselves through not delivering what they promised in the manifesto. Then what happens is at the end of Cameron's tenure, we get Brexit. So obviously Brexit comes along. Farage is at the forefront of that, and the British people, I wouldn't have voted that way, and I didn't vote in that election because it was at Glastonbury, and I didn't think we'd come out the EU, but we did. And then what's happened is they haven't delivered for the people. That we haven't fully decoupled ourselves from it. The European Court of Human Rights, etc., still got a massive sway on British law. So people are furious. People are irate. People aren't happy. People are constantly voting for people to say, we don't want any more immigration. There's too many people here. We don't want immigration or legal immigration. But yet, immigration and legal immigration's going up. The people who are getting voted in aren't listening to the people. And now anybody who opposes it online or opposes it with the words are labelled far right. So this is bubbling up. Then we get Southport happening. Southport, where it's a massacre, and that will come out in time. He's attempted to kill everybody that was there. They keep talking about three poor young girls he killed, but he tried to kill more. Now, that was a Welsh Christian that was swept under the carpet. There's going to be more to come out on that on the 20th of January if he doesn't close. I wouldn't be surprised to see them shut that off from the media. But as we've seen with Hillsborough, you cannot stop the truth coming out. You can delay it, you can brush it under the carpet, but the truth will come out. We're seeing it now with the grooming gangs. It's starting because international people are getting involved, because this has gone now to an international scale. There was a prime minister or a senator from Australia tweeting about it. Lots of big voices in America are tweeting about it. Seeing Ted Cruz, big Republican politician, obviously Musk, So this ain't going away. They're not going to be able to wash this away. Plus, they've got this Southport one coming down the track to them. Now, I don't know what's gone on there, but the way they've tried to hide it, the media, you know, the pictures of him drawn as a young boy, the photographs on the news as a young boy, they're not going to be able to stem the flow on this. Like, this is... If Harrison Biden administration would have prevailed and got in, they might have been able to postpone this into the future. The fact that Trump's there, Musk, I think, has been sent in as the agitator. I think he's been sent in to absolutely noise this government up by the way, because of what they're doing, because of what they've hidden. David Lammy said what he said. You can't be the foreign secretary to our most valuable ally. If we haven't got the American support militarily, we are absolutely fucked. We are, like, you'll never believe. And if they pull out of Ukraine, the Americans, and they pull out of that region, we better get out of there relatively quickly, because if Putin rolls them over, which he will do if the Yanks pull out, he'll roll very, very quickly through everybody else. And we'll be back into kind of World War II scenario where we're having to defend these shores. And let's see how many of you woke. Let's see how many of your virtue signalers are there, dug in the trenches like our grandfathers were in World War I and World War II to defend these shores. Let's see what happens to these religious rape gangs. Let's see how long they last fighting for this country.